The storm began without warning. Sheets of water slammed against the cracked asphalt as thunder rolled like distant growls of something alive. Matthew gripped the steering wheel tightly, squinting through his windshield, trying to see the faint yellow lines that guided his lonely drive home. The wipers moved furiously, yet the downpour blurred everything into a moving wall of gray. Then, from the corner of his eye, he noticed a shape by the roadside, a figure, unmoving, drenched, and barely visible through the storm. Against his better judgment, he slowed down. He pulled over, heart pounding, the sound of rain hammering the roof drowning out his thoughts. When he opened the door, icy water rushed in, soaking his shoes instantly. The figure was a man, pale, shivering, dressed in clothes that looked several decades out of place. "You okay?" Matthew shouted over the thunder. The stranger nodded slowly, his eyes wide and glassy, as if he were seeing through Matthew rather than at him. "Can I get a ride?" the man asked, voice brittle, almost pleading. Matthew hesitated, then unlocked the passenger door. Inside the car, the man barely moved, only staring straight ahead. "Where to?" Matthew asked, trying to sound casual. "Just up the road," the stranger whispered. The silence that followed felt unnatural. No sound but the relentless rain and the rhythmic creak of the windshield wipers. Then, as the headlights caught a road sign, Matthew glanced over. The seat was empty. The man had vanished. Water dripped where he'd been sitting, pooling into the seat. Panicking, Matthew stopped the car, leapt out, and called into the darkness. Nothing answered but wind and rain. The only trace of the stranger was a muddy footprint on the passenger side mat. A barefoot print, small, almost childlike. Shivering, Matthew got back in, locking the doors. The radio crackled with static, then a faint voice whispered through, "You shouldn't have stopped." He turned it off instantly. The rest of the drive was a blur. When Matthew finally reached home, drenched and trembling, he noticed something odd. Muddy footprints, the same size as before, led from his front door all the way into his living room. The sound of dripping water echoed through the house. The storm outside was still raging, but the one inside had just begun. The next day, Matthew couldn't shake what happened. He tried to convince himself it was exhaustion, a trick of the rain. But that night, as thunder cracked again, his phone buzzed. An unknown number sent a text. "Pick me up again?" His blood froze. He deleted the message, threw the phone aside, and went to the window. Across the street, through the blur of the downpour, he saw a house he didn't remember seeing before. Its porch light glowed a sickly yellow, and behind the rain-streaked glass, a shadow moved. He couldn't stop staring. Something about the shape in the window seemed familiar, tall, still, and eerily patient. A faint tapping began on his back door. 3 knocks, then silence. He grabbed a flashlight and forced himself to check. The door swung open slightly, rain spraying across the tiles. No one was there. Just footprints, again barefoot, leading away into the storm, toward the house with the yellow light. Driven by a mixture of fear and curiosity, Matthew crossed the street. The wind howled, the rain stung his face, and the air carried a metallic taste. The house seemed older up close, its paint peeling, porch steps warped. Yet the light was on, steady and warm. He knocked once. The door creaked open on its own. Inside smelled of damp wood and something rotting. "Hello," he called out. No answer. Each step deeper into the house felt heavier. The walls were lined with photographs, all showing the same man, the stranger from last night, standing beside different people, always outside in the rain. In the last frame, the stranger stood alone, his face a hollow blur, and the caption beneath read, "Taken the night they stopped." A sudden crack of thunder made Matthew spin around, and there he was again, standing at the end of the hall, water dripping from his hair, eyes dark and hollow. "You stopped for me," he whispered. "Now it's your turn to wait." The light flickered out. Everything went black. When Matthew woke, he was lying on his couch. His clothes were dry. The storm had eased into a steady drizzle. Maybe it had all been a nightmare. But then the phone rang, the old landline that hadn't worked in years. He answered slowly, hand trembling. "Matthew," a voice said, distant and distorted. "Do you see the rain? Don't let it stop." The line went dead that he sat in silence, the ticking of the wall clock unnaturally loud. He checked outside. The house with the yellow porch light was gone. Just a vacant lot soaked in puddles. The longer he stared, the more the puddles seemed to ripple without raindrops. Something was moving beneath the surface. Later that evening, his television flickered on by itself. Static filled the room, and through the white noise, a shape appeared on the screen. Someone standing in rain, looking straight into the camera. Then, faintly, a whisper, "You stopped. You left me behind." The image distorted, and the sound became a low rumble that shook the walls. Desperate, Matthew unplugged the TV, but the screen remained on, the glow painting his face in ghostly light. The man on screen stepped closer, closer, until only his eyes filled the frame. Then everything went black again. The next flash of lightning illuminated Matthew's reflection in the window, and behind him, standing silently in the darkened room, was the stranger. Matthew woke to the sound of rushing water. His feet were soaked. His living room floor was covered in an inch of murky water. Rain hammered the roof, louder than ever before. He stumbled toward the door, but when he opened it, what lay beyond wasn't his street. It was an endless expanse of dark floodwater reflecting flashes of lightning like broken glass. He called for help, but his voice was swallowed by the storm. The water rose around his legs, dragging at him, pulling him toward something deeper. Then, a faint singing reached his ears, a woman's voice, calm and haunting. He followed it, half-dazed, until he saw her, standing on a piece of debris, holding an umbrella that didn't move in the wind. When she turned, her face was pale and soft, her eyes sad. "You stopped for him," she said. "Now he waits for you, like we all did." Behind her, countless faces began to emerge from the flood, men, women, children, their bodies faintly glowing beneath the surface. Each reached upward, silent mouths opening as if to scream. Matthew tried to run, but the water thickened, clinging to his body like tar. The woman's voice rose again, more urgent now. "Don't let it stop. Don't let the rain stop." Then she vanished beneath the surface. He woke again, dry, breathing hard, lying on his living room floor. The clock read 3:33 a.m. But when he looked outside, the rain was still falling. And in the reflection of his window, someone stood behind him, dripping wet, whispering the same words over and over. "Don't let it stop." The next day, Matthew drove out of town. He needed distance, air, anything but rain. Yet the clouds followed him, growing darker as he drove. At a small gas station, an old radio played a local broadcast. "If you've seen the storm, don't leave it behind. It remembers you." He froze. "Repeat," the announcer said, voice trembling slightly. "If you see the rain and it calls your name, don't answer." The clerk noticed his pale face and said, "You look like you've been caught in it too." When Matthew asked what she meant, she just pointed toward the radio tower visible through the mist. "That's where it started," she murmured. "People went missing up there after the big flood." He should have left right then, but something drew him toward the tower. The drive took an hour, rain pounding the windshield the entire way. When he arrived, the place was deserted, doors creaking open and shut in the wind. Inside, the air smelled of ozone and rust. The radio equipment still hummed faintly, though no one was there. Then, the static came again. The same whispering voice. "Matthew, you stopped for me." The dials turned on their own. The signal strengthened. Through the speakers, he heard his own voice, saying words he didn't remember. "I'll come back. I promise." And then the rain outside began falling harder, as if something enormous was coming closer. Every window in his house had fogged over. Shapes began to appear within the mist, faint outlines of faces pressed against the glass. They didn't move. They just watched. Matthew walked from window to window, breath shaky, unable to look away. When thunder struck, their faces vanished, only to appear again. Closer, he grabbed his camera, desperate to prove he wasn't imagining things. Each flash of the lens captured a blur of motion, pale hands, open mouths. When he checked the photos, his stomach dropped. Every image showed himself standing outside in the rain, staring back into his own window. That night, the sound of dripping water echoed again. From his bedroom door, he saw the trail, muddy prints leading to the mirror. He approached slowly. The reflection rippled, as though made of liquid. Then his reflection smiled, while he didn't. It lifted a hand, pointing toward the window behind him. He turned. The stranger stood outside again, rain running down his face, lips moving silently. Lightning struck, and for a brief instant, Matthew saw dozens of figures behind the stranger, all motionless, watching, waiting. When he looked back, the reflection was gone. The rain kept falling. Matthew decided to retrace his route from that first night, desperate to find answers. The road was half flooded, trees bending under the storm. Every mile felt longer, heavier. He reached the curve where he'd first seen the stranger. The roadside was empty, except for a small, half-buried sign. Town evacuated after 1987 flood, 27 missing. He drove deeper, the rain blurring everything again. Then the headlights illuminated something up ahead. A car, old and rusted, flipped into a ditch. He got out, rain soaking his hair, and approached. The license plate was the same as his. Inside, half submerged, was a man's skeleton, still clutching a steering wheel that he stumbled back, horrified. His reflection in the car window didn't match his movements anymore. It stared at him, expressionless, water dripping from its eyes. Then, slowly, it whispered, "You didn't survive that night." The world tilted. The rain grew deafening. The road dissolved into a whirlpool of gray water, pulling him downward. He screamed, but no sound came. Only the stranger's voice echoed in the storm. "You stopped. You waited." Everything went dark. When Matthew opened his eyes, he was standing in the radio tower again. The equipment hummed. The static grew louder, forming words he didn't want to hear. "You are the broadcast now. Keep the rain alive." Through the window, lightning flashed, revealing the entire town underwater, rooftops glimmering beneath the waves. He realized the tower was above it all, floating in a sea of storm clouds. The walls vibrated with voices, hundreds of them, crying, whispering, calling out his name. He covered his ears, but they grew louder. Then, one voice cut through, the stranger's. "Tell them," it said. "Tell them so we can rest." He grabbed the microphone, shouting into it. "Stop. What do you want from me?" The response came like thunder. "The truth. The story you lived. The one you forgot." And then, as the rain eased slightly, images began flashing through his mind. Headlights, the crash, the cold water filling his lungs. He had died that night. The stranger had only been trying to warn him. But something had kept his spirit trapped, the storm itself, feeding on fear, on unfinished stories. The only way out was to tell it, to make others hear. Matthew began speaking into the microphone. Every word summoned more flashes of memory, the flood, the faces, the echoing voices. The more he spoke, the calmer the storm became. Outside, the gray began to fade into faint light. He realized what the stranger meant. If the rain stops, the memory dies that he told it all, every second, every haunting. The equipment sparked, the static screamed, and for the first time, he saw the stranger smile faintly through the reflection in the glass. "You remember," the voice said. "Now let it go." The tower trembled. The floor cracked, water flooding upward. The voices turned into wind. Matthew stood his ground, rain soaking through his clothes again. "If someone hears this," he whispered, "don't stop for the man in the rain." Then lightning struck the tower. The broadcast ended. Days later, the skies cleared. Locals discovered the old radio tower burned out, its signal dead. But that night, during a sudden drizzle, the frequency returned for a single minute. A man's voice whispered through static, "It's over now." Then silenced in the years that followed. Drivers claimed to see a figure standing by the same old road during storms. A man holding a microphone, drenched but calm, waiting for someone to stop. Those who did swore the rain grew heavier, the world dimmer, until they could hear faint voices whispering from the downpour. Some say it's Matthew, still keeping the story alive so the flood never returns. Others believe he became part of the rain itself, a guardian of restless souls lost to the storm. And when the thunder rolls, you might hear it too, that faint voice between raindrops, urging you not to stop, not to listen. But if you do, you'll never escape the rain again.